So I would like to welcome Mr. Andronov. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I hope you hear me as well.
Yes, we are starting with our first point of discussion, and it is about the lessons learned from the previous world economic crisis. Did you use some lessons in order to prepare better for the current situation, and what are the lessons you are already taking from this crisis to the future?
Well, certainly I will try to answer to this, but as far as I've heard, and I'm not here to talk as KBC, but rather like chairman of the Banking Association Management Board.
Exactly.
I would like to echo something which Professor Ganev just mentioned with regard to KBC and the forecast of KBC. For good understanding, our scenario for the V-shaped recovery accounts only for 15% of our expectations. Our base case scenario is the U-shaped recovery, which he was quoting this minus 10% this year, 7% next year recovery. That is our U-shape, and it counts for roughly, let's say, 45% of our expectations. So this is still the main scenario. And we have a W scenario, which is a little bit more protracted recovery, which will take a little bit longer. And this counts now for about 40%. So number two scenario is rather a little bit more pessimistic. And it's very close to the basic scenario, I must say, especially now with increasing stake due to the relaxations that take place massively around the world and including in the countries of Europe. Now, coming back to your point, what lessons we have learned from 2008, I would kindly ask you, but first of all, thank you for this invitation, you should not forget, kindly ask you to put on the screen only one slide, and this is the set one in the European Union. I will not take the time of the audience with all my slides. You can find them later on. I will send them. I have sent them all. So if you can put on the screen only the set one in the European Union, and
I did it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. I will keep only this one, and it's not just to kind of overstress the fact that Bulgarian banks have increased their capital to the top of the European group, and the ratio of our banks is far better than the average. I'm not intending to say so. The point here is that this picture would look 10 years ago completely different, and most of the first digits would be out of the picture. So that means the CET1 ratios of the banking sector back in 2007 and 8 would be normally half of what you see for the different countries today. But I think you get my point that big time and big part of the change and the lessons of 2008 are linked to the fact that the banks have been over leveraged. It means the capital that they have disposed of was completely insufficient for the risky operations that the banks were running. The second thing, there have been many sector concentrations. We have seen, not only in this country, but in many other countries, a lot of investments in some of the sectors, the most profitable, the rapidly growing sectors, but also the most risky ones. I think this is a key second lesson, the concentration issue. The third lesson is, and it's for a new economy, market economy like ours, crucial one. Once you want to invest long term, you have to be very careful with the so-called free time economy, with all these sectors that are linked with the free time of the people. You have to be very careful with this, and certainly give it some stake, but be careful to avoid a large presence in your portfolio. This was not the case in many of the banks in 2007. I also would say that a key lesson from those days is the quick reaction. If you have quick reaction, also the recovery could be close to V-shaped or U-shaped. if EU institutions are incapable of taking quick decisions, if everything which you want to do in order to remedy the economy would be taken in years of discussion, after years of discussions, you probably will deserve nicely in the end a very protracted and L-shaped GDP evolution, which you certainly don't want to see. So one of the lessons from the countries, and you could take the United States primarily, is if you take quick decisions, you would be able to get and harvest the result as you would expect. So what future lessons, I would definitely say that the banks, and some of the banks, I'm not willing to generalize now, but some of the banks would certainly kind of focus more attention on less cyclical sectors instead of just maintaining equal sector concentration limits. That's for sure. It's probably very technical, but it's important for us because that also determines how the banks will support the economy afterwards. If we would now reshape the sector concentrations, and I guess this is going on now in the banking sector, well, banks are retreating from some sectors of the free economy and focusing all the efforts of the rest of the economy. And you should expect that for those, also the financing will be a little bit more scarce than in the past. What else? We certainly have experienced something which was nicely mentioned by Jamie Dimon, the JP Morgan CEO, a few days ago in a conference call. Well, he said we have been like a kid kicked in the ass and we jumped in the future, and suddenly we found ourselves in around 2030 in the future. Well, we had to do quick turn to the digital world. By every one of us has gone working home office. My company as well, 80% of the staff, and it's a big number of the staff here, can imagine 80% sending home, and a very complex organization like the bank works from home without any preparation, without training. We had to jump in the deep waters without any preparation, and that was good because it turned out that we can swim. And after you have learned that you can swim, probably you could do many other things in the sea and try to be more efficient and more future-oriented. I guess this is a major lesson from the present crisis, which we did not certainly learn from the previous one.
Thank you very much.
But I'll keep it here.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we go to the second point. What was the role of Bulgarian banks in the discussion and decision of support package at national and European level? And of course, has the role of bank changed since the start of the lockdown, and will it change now in the months to come?
Well, on the first one, I must say that we had the key role in our Bulgarian context. The sector was the initiator of the moratorium, which you know well. This deferral payment holidays moratorium, which was endorsed, was entirely developed by the Banking Association alone. We were tracking what is going on in the other countries. We were quite concerned well ahead of the adoption of this moratorium already at the installation of the state of emergency of the lockdown. We were thinking ourselves, why are we so slow here? The other countries are ready with support packages. They're ready with moratoriums, with stuff like this. Our clients will soon be knocking our doors. They have delays, they have deferrals, they cannot service their loans, and we have nothing to offer. Well, we had to receive the attitude of the central bank, which was in favor of waiting for the general pan-European solution, which was like the guidelines of the EBA, and we had to wait a little bit longer. But meanwhile, the whole structure and design of the process have been developed nicely by my colleagues, by the working groups at the Banking Association, and hence we were ready to immediately start with the measures. At European level, we have given our input, but I can tell you the processes that have been driven by the major countries. I guess you're not surprised by this. A good statistics of the latest days is that we have now about 80,000 loans already applied for deferral, and 75%, around 60,000, have been already deferred after almost 1 month and 1 week after the introduction of the moratorium, which is a good news. There is 1 more month to go until the end of this window. And we expect, because there is a recent deceleration of the applications that are arriving in the offices of the banks, deceleration of the new cases, which means we see the clients are getting less and less inspired or whatever. They see less and less need to go for this. We may end up with like 148,000, which would be like 6-7% of all credit accounts in the country, and 8-9% of the volume of the portfolio of the banking sector, most likely at the end of this payment holidays deferred. So I think it's one of the most and most successful measures that is implemented, because already the first days after its introduction, we had big piles of cases, and clients are really calling and using this opportunity quite actively. I think this is for this third question. For the fourth question, what is the role today? As I said, big time of our efforts is already taken by the deferrals. A big number of our staff is working to defer loans. But meanwhile, I can tell you, and at least I'm certainly stepping out of my own bank, most of our big time of our attention is now dedicated entirely to doing new business. Actually, if I should roughly quantify this, it goes like 80% of our time is doing new business and 20% is deferrals. So most of our efforts are directed towards looking and finding clients who need now support, who would be happy to get some support, and then partner with those clients. For good understanding and a fair judgment, I must say that not all banks are having this attitude now, but I think with the time passing, they will be gradually turning to this point, and they will also returning to the market. So I believe I can tell that the banks will be more and more engaged with the recovery, with the quick rebound of the economy. Quick, relatively quick. Of course, the U-shape doesn't apply for quick, but relatively quick in the last quarter of this year and the quarters of next year, we expect that this will be very clearly visible. Yeah, the banks will be busy with this process. The banks will give their contribution. They're well capitalized. This is why I was showing this slide to show that we have sufficient capital. First of all, to confront with the cliff effect that will come in the end of this year. Part of the deferred loans will certainly not be regular after all, and some of these loans will become non-performing. That is for sure the case. We have no illusions about this. We certainly will have to confront ourselves with the fact that this will be coming in the end of the year, and we will have to take the hit for with some impairments and foreclosures of a certain number of cases. But most of the cases, as we see now, are getting better, and we will be hopefully better off than we anticipated in the beginning of next year. And then, if we weather properly this cliff effect in the end of the year, we will be perfectly fit and capable of supporting the recovery of the economy.
Thank you very much. Speaking on recovery and resilience, what does the banking package in support of citizens and companies, with emphasis on companies, during the pandemic in Bulgaria include now? And are there any differences between the help you are providing to the big corporations and the SMEs, which are the larger portion of our economy?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that with regard to the package, as you call it, we have this the payment holidays as major instrument, and we have the instruments of the official authorities, which are this Bulgarian Development Bank instruments for companies and for citizens. I'm not going to discuss how good they are, whether they're good designed or they're working well. We shall see. I'm a little bit more critical towards those because I expect that the colleagues would behave not like bankers, but they would take more seriously their mandates to support the recovery. I think this will be in the end the result, but it will again take some time of learning. So these are the two major instruments, the moratorium here and the programs of Bulgarian Development Bank, plus the Fund of Funds program, as well as another instrument. We also dispose of good available programs of the European Investment Fund, the COVID-19 COSME program, the INNOFIN program. We have the Jeremy programs, COVID-19 for trade finance. We have the Sustainable Cities Fund programs. All these are directed specifically for COVID-19 recoveries. We have the, as I said, the Fund of Funds and the European Investment Fund, Pan-European Guarantee Fund. So we have, and there are some more certainly to be mentioned, but instruments we have enough. Now the whole thing is to make sure that these instruments could be tailored down to the needs of the clients and they will reach the companies. And to respond to your second question, I certainly have to admit that most of the programs are targeting the small and medium-sized enterprises.
Thank you very much. So coming to the last point of our discussion, what are your recommendations to companies who plan their restart, and how can banks help companies to seize the opportunity that C-19 is giving all of us to restructure and restart greener, more digital, sustainable and socially responsible? As you said, we jumped not for a general rehearsal, but right into 2030, where the Sustainable Development Goals are already completed. And we also have questions from the audience, again, for the Green Deal. Are we going to use this investment to restructure? What are your advices?
Well, what are your recommendations to the companies who plan to the restart? That's an interesting one. By the way, what we did, we called all the companies, and it's you can see how they're reacting. Some of them are still sticking to their original agenda. That's strange, but there are companies that believe COVID has not hit them significantly. They can disregard this impact. Some are a little bit, and this is the majority, more cautious, and of course the number of companies that have some issue to consider the biggest number. But if they are ready to restart, I definitely would do this with a good plan. Regardless of the fact that the plans today are difficult to develop, I would start with a plan, and I would have different scenarios in this plan. I would have plan A, B, and C, more optimistic, basic, and A, pessimistic. And to be honest, I would prepare myself for the most pessimistic one. I would make sure that I'm ready to walk through the most difficult scenario, and then I will start my operations, of course, hoping for the best. Definitely, another thing which is good to implement and to bear in mind, and I guess all the companies, most of the companies will embark in the end at this avenue, is that they have to go for cost optimization. Inevitably, you will have to improvise, you will have to improve, you will have to find better ways and more efficient ways for your cost, because your income will not be the same, that's for sure. I even talked to a minister who told me, if we are now able to run the whole ministry with only 600 people, how the hell I'm paying to 2,000 employees already for decades? I mean, these are interesting lessons that all people are now taking out of this situation. Of course, this is quite an extreme statement. No one is going to do this to that extent, but everyone will be more cautious with the cost in the coming days. And the third one, and I will stop there because there are many more, and your time is not unlimited, is definitely the digitalization of the business. And I'll link to the previous one. And of course, you have to have a very clear idea how your business will be behaving in a completely different environment, where even the clients, the customers, have learned how to behave digitally. To be honest, what we have experienced during the last 2 months, this transformation and transition of regular clients towards digital channels, normally we would push through for more than 2 years. In 2 months, we have reached the level of transition which normally we get for about 1 to 2 years. Imagine the jump that has been caused by the COVID, so a positive thing out of it. So you have to carefully judge if your business is ready to navigate in this environment. It will be completely different than the old world in which we have been working. And there, of course, you have to pay attention to your security, because what we see also during these days is many clients are arriving at the digital means of working and in banking as well, but they have little culture with regard to the cyber security, and they easily get victims of cyber criminals who are getting now more active and more sophisticated, and they see more chances this day. I will keep it here. I'm ready to take questions if there are. Thank you very much for your patience and attention.